You are listening to LOA Recon with the Good Vibe coach Jeanette Ma, where we dissect the ins and outs and the art and science of conscious creation, all intended to amp up your manifesting game. Let's have some fun together. Okay, so today I'm going to tell you the story of how I got hooked on conscious creation. You're going to hear what a game changer this was for me and my life, even though I was a complete and total skeptic. In fact, I wasn't even skeptical. I was a non-believer. But in one fell swoop, I became such a believer that I literally couldn't stop talking about this with everyone that I knew. It's how I became a law of attraction coach. I'm not joking when I say I could not stop talking about it. But in the beginning, that was not so. All right, so let me place where I was in life. I was working a job that I didn't love. I more than didn't love it. This job was killing me, literally. My physical health was so bad. I'd gone to traditional doctors. They couldn't diagnose me with anything. No one had any idea what was going on. Finally, I turned to an alternative health practitioner recommended by a friend, and they did muscle testing in this office, and he says to me, well, it's obvious. You got to quit your job and break up with your boyfriend. Because in addition to having a job that I hated, I also was in a dead-end relationship. And the only thing that I had going for me in life, the only thing that brought me any solace, the reason I got out of bed every day was because of the volunteer work I did as a foster mom for local rescue groups. Different dogs and cats who had been rescued from shelters and needed a foster home. That's what I did. It's what I loved. Right? It's the only thing that I loved in my life until one day I didn't love it anymore. I remember, oh my gosh, it was summer in Utah. August. Okay, we're in the desert out here. Summers are hard on our landscape. And I'm a person who really likes walking barefoot in the grass. Okay, so I went out to go scoop poop one day, and the poop wouldn't scoop. It was just rolling along in the dirt. And I looked around and realized my lawn was gone. I had 8 big dogs, right? So a lot of traffic in a teeny weeny yard. I had like an 850 square foot house with 8 big dogs. My lawn didn't stand a chance. So at this realization that my lawn was gone and just everything else in life not working, I had what I like to think of as my first and last mini breakdown where I just lost it. I threw the bag of poop in one direction. It landed in the neighbor's bushes, and I threw the pooper scooper in another direction. It landed on the garage roof, and I was done. I was just done with the capital D. I went to bed. I was done with life. I wasn't going to work anymore. I did keep eating, but I just ate in bed. I wasn't taking care of animals anymore. My live-in boyfriend, he basically had to take everything over, and it was a lot of work. We didn't just have our 8 dogs. We had cats. Oh gosh, it was a lot of work. I wasn't doing any of it because I was done. So there I am in bed with nothing to do. And I read a book that I had picked up a couple weeks ago. At work, I used to spend my breaks at the bookstore across the street. And one day, I was browsing the shelves and I saw a book called How to Get Everything You Ever Wanted. And I started to flip through the pages. And then I thought, come on, Jeanette, you don't have to browse this book. It's called How to Get Everything You Ever Wanted. You're going to own this book. So I bought it without really knowing what it was. Okay, so when I have my little breakdown and I've retreated to bed for the rest of my life, I'm not showering, I'm not going to work, I'm not doing nothing. I had nothing to do but read. So I start reading this book. And I feel kind of like a fool because as soon as I start reading it, I realize this author's crazy. She's asking you to do things that I would never do, like set up a sacred space and burn some incense, get a symbol of your desire, the sort of stuff I was way, way, way too close-minded for back then. And I was kind of mad at myself for spending the money on something that was clearly crazy. But I had a rule for myself that I had to do at least one thing from every self-help book that I read, because I was reading a lot of self-help books back then. Kind of a self-help book junkie, you might say. And because I had nothing else to do, I read the whole book. And because I had this rule that I had to do one thing from every book, I tried to find the least crazy thing in this book that I could engage just to satisfy my personal rule. And the least crazy thing that I found was something called scripting. It's where you talk about what you want as if you already have it. And it sounded crazy, but I was kind of beyond caring about too much at this point in life. I'd kind of given up, you know what I mean? So, scripting. I came out of the bedroom. This was a Thursday night. My boyfriend was trying to keep the house together on his own. He's feeding all the dogs, he's doing all the cleanup, and he's quickly approaching the end of his rope, too. But he's out there feeding the dogs. I came out of the bedroom and I said, "This is going to sound crazy, but just hear me out." And I start talking about, I decided the thing to script about was getting one of our foster dogs adopted. Because we had been on a dry streak for adoptions for like 3 months. Friends in rescue were like, they'd never seen a dry streak as long as we had. We were not only not getting anyone adopted, we were getting animals returned to us, because once you foster an animal, if they get returned, it comes back to you. And not only were we getting returns, but like, I was driving to work one day and the car in front of me hit a dog in the road and kept driving. So I pull over and I put this Scotty dog in my car. He bit me. It's the only time I've ever been bit by a dog. And I took him to the vet and then the shelter, and no one claimed him. So then I get this dog too, because I'm not going to leave him at the shelter. So we had neighbors' dogs. Okay, there was a neighbor's dog that kept coming over to my house. I'm sure because all the dogs, it's like a big dog party at my house, right? We got so many dogs over here. So this neighbor's dog kept coming over to our house. He lived like a mile and a half away. We kept taking the dog back to him because we tracked him down. You know, he had tags on. Finally, the owner says to us once he doesn't want this dog anymore, "Do we want to buy him?" "No, we don't want to buy your dog, but we will help you get a proper home for him so he doesn't end up at the shelter too." His name was Jeff. And you know what? For as much as he used to like to come over and play at our house, once he had to stay at our house, he didn't want to be there anymore. He was he was a challenging dog, to say the least, just ginormous husky. And so this was what my scripting was going to be. Since we hadn't had an adoption in forever, I scripted about how I said to my boyfriend, "Isn't it great how Jeff got adopted by that husband and wife with the 2 kids and the other dog for him to play with? And they have plenty of money so they could meet whatever his medical needs might be, and they live close by so we could go see him whenever we want to. Isn't that great?" I was just making it up on the fly. It was really half-hearted. I even just said that now with more energy than I said at the time. And my boyfriend, he looked at me like I had 2 heads, because there's Jeff laying at my feet right at the time. And I didn't explain to him what scripting was. I was beyond caring about anyone thinking that I was crazy. Actually, my boyfriend had seen me have my little fit in the backyard. He had actually opened the screen door to say something to me, and he saw throwing poop stuff everywhere. And he just closed the screen door and kept looking at me like, "Yep, this woman's lost her mind." So I finished the script. I turned around. I went back to bed. I didn't explain what it was. I didn't care that it sounded crazy. And then that was Thursday night. So Saturday morning rolls around and my boyfriend takes all the animals, the same dogs, to the same adoption fair they've been going to for the past 3 months, where no one's getting adopted. And he comes back after dropping everyone off. And like within an hour of drop off, the phone rang and I could tell on caller ID that it was the girl who runs the adoption fair. And look, there's only one reason they call you that soon. It's either because there's no space, so they're telling you to come get your dog, or your dog's acting up, he's barking, making a nuisance of himself, so they're telling you to come get your dog, or your dog is sick, they're telling you to come get your dog. So I see her number on caller ID and I say, "Don't answer it." But he's a nice guy and he figures if there's a problem, he wants to help solve it. So he answered the phone. And I could hear Trish on the other end of the line. I was standing close enough. I could hear Trish say, "You got to get down here right now." And I hit my boyfriend in the shoulder and I said, "I told you so." And Trish went on to say, "There's 2 families down here fighting over Jeff and I don't know who to give him to." I get emotional every time I tell this story. And then what she was saying did not make sense, okay? First of all, you maybe have to go through at least a dozen applications before you even find one worth considering, let alone approving, because they get refused for all sorts of things. If you ever left a dog behind when you moved, if you ever let them ride in the back of your truck, if you rent instead of own and your landlord, I mean, you could get rejected for a bazillion reasons. So that she's here saying there's two families down here fighting over Jeff and she doesn't know who to give him to, it didn't compute because it just doesn't work that way. So I drove with my boyfriend down to the adoption fair and we walked through the doors. And sure enough, there's these two families. Oh my gosh, you guys, they were just like I'd scripted. Husband and wife, they both had two kids, they both had a dog, and they were perfect. I read their applications. I could understand why she couldn't choose between them, and they were both insisting on having this dog that no one gave a second look at for the past 3 months at the same adoption fair. All of a sudden, now they're fighting over him. Like, literally, they were fighting over him. I couldn't even believe it. I was speechless. I handed the paperwork back. I turned around on my heels, and I went and sat out in the car in the parking lot to let them sort it out. I didn't know what to make of it. I got to be honest with you, it kind of freaked me out. It really freaked me out. It didn't kind of freak me out. It really freaked me out. So not only did Jeff get adopted to an amazing family, but the next day, Oakley got adopted too. Oakley was our Springer Spaniel who was super high energy. I don't know if anyone has had a Springer Spaniel before, but these guys are kind of known. High energy dogs. If you don't channel that energy, they will drive you crazy. And that foster dog was doing that to us in our little teeny 850 square foot house. Oakley gets adopted the next day by, oh my gosh, this most amazing guy. A guy who knew, I'm getting excited. It was so amazing. A guy who knew, not only knew, but loved Springer Spaniels. He already had another one. He wanted a friend for it. And he went hiking all the time. He was super active. It was a great adoption. Okay, that was Sunday. Tuesday night, a local group, they offered to take 2 of my black labs off my hands. You guys, I was down 4 days. In 4 days, I was down 4 dogs. It felt like a freaking miracle. It might not sound like a big deal to you, but from someone who was literally done in life that she wasn't getting out of bed, this was a huge, huge, huge turnaround. And all I had done was that crazy scripting. I realized, you know what? That author might not have been so crazy after all. And after that, I read everything I could get my hands on about what was going on here. I don't know if Adrian used the word law of attraction in that book, How to Get Everything You Ever Wanted. I realized later that's what it was. There wasn't a whole lot out there back then. I think maybe it was before The Secret. It was before Ask and It Is Given. It took me a while to find some material on this, and there certainly wasn't as much books or interviews or anything on it that there is these days, but it got my attention. And after that, anytime anyone would come up to me and if they were complaining at work about such and such, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I totally know something that can fix that. And I would talk about what law of attraction and what it meant and our power to create reality. And they'd look at me like I was crazy. And pretty soon people stopped coming over to my cubicle to talk to me. I started to have this desire. I just wish there were other people I could talk about this with. And then that desire evolved eventually into, and wouldn't it be great if I got paid so I could quit this stupid job? Here I am. Really, really cool. But, here's another really funny thing. So, because I was thinking the moral of that story is you do not have to believe this stuff for it to work. I knew it was crazy. I totally did not believe in it. But I had that stupid rule where I do one thing from every book. So I scripted, not because I believed in it, and I didn't even do it with energy. You don't have to be good at this. You don't have to study it. You don't have to believe in it. And still, this stuff works. So much so, listen to this. My boyfriend, who I didn't explain to him what I was doing. He was just paying attention, putting the dots together that, talk about what you want as if it's already happened and watch it happen like magic. So that was like a Thursday night that I read the book and scripted, finished the book and scripted. Saturday, Jeff gets adopted. Sunday, Oakley gets adopted. And then Tuesday night, I had 2 other dogs off my hands. And then I went back to work. Okay, I'm feeling like I'm high on life now. All of a sudden, there's hope. There's something to be really excited about. So I'm going back to work. And at the end of the week, it was like Thursday or Friday, I was going back to work in the middle of the day. I had taken the bus back to work. I had been coming home every day during the week for nooners with my boyfriend. Now, normally, I was like a 3 times a week kind of girl. All of a sudden, I was a 3 times a day kind of girl. I was taking the bus home at lunchtime to have sex. which is not like me. So I think it was like Thursday. I was on the way back to work and I was like, wow, scratching my head. This is not like me. This is so weird for me to be having all this sex. And I realized, oh my word, my boyfriend is doing it. He's practicing this whole scripting thing. He's using his creative powers to manifest more sex with me. I did not like that idea. I did not like the idea that someone else could influence me so strongly. And I called him and I said, I know what you're doing. And I told him it wasn't ethical and that he needed to stop. It just freaked me out. I mean, in hindsight, I'm like, really? What would a girl have against having a lot of sex? But I'm telling you, it was a wake-up call to me about our creative powers and how easy it was to put them to work. We don't have to study this stuff. We don't have to understand it through and through. We don't even really have to fully believe it in order for it to have an effect in our life. That was a game changer for me. So, if there are any takeaways I would want to share with you, I would say, yeah, knowledge is overrated. You know what? Knowing something is cool, but if we don't put it into practice, it's pointless. So if you got any inspiration from hearing my story about how easy it is to create what you want, please use it to go bring something that brings you delight in life. And there's also something else about that story that I think is worth pointing out, and that's the power of contrast. All my best manifesting stories are on the heels of crazy, dark contrast. I'm talking strong, unwanted stuff, like, having a nervous breakdown. Oh, you know what is another part of that story that I sometimes forget to spotlight is the power of relief. Okay, I didn't know enough about conscious creation to understand that going to bed was actually taking inspired action. It was doing something that felt better instead of making myself continue the slog through my horrible, miserable life. I just let myself give up. That was actually a vibrational improvement. At the time, I didn't understand that. But in hindsight, when I think about that, combining the relief of giving up with the power of scripting, speaking what you want into existence, that's a pretty magical combination, especially when there was all of that contrast, when I was so much in the dark. When you just crack the door open with just a little bit of light, it makes a huge difference. Actually, the really good analogy is the one where they talk about the further you pull back on the rubber band, the further it travels when you let go, right? So I had a lot of contrast going in that situation, and I think that's why I had such amazing results from one little half-hearted scripting session. But I also think it's possible to overwork this stuff, and a little bit can go a long way. I also wasn't attached to results because I wasn't expecting any results. So there were a lot of cool things flowing there. But if I could have you remember anything from this story, it would probably be that as you speak, so shall it be. So pay attention to what you're speaking into existence. If you enjoyed this episode and got any inspiration from it, please do use your powers for something good. Thanks for listening and happy manifesting.